and we can just jump in to try to use everyone's time efficiently. Before we get to Chris from Plug-in Stations, I thought we could take a few minutes to talk about an opportunity that has arisen with the Harlem Valley Rail Trail for the county. There's momentum led by the Harlem Valley Rail Trail Association and Ghent Town Supervisor Simmons and the officials in Chatham and Philmont to write a planning grant to DEC, which would require a 50% match for planning out the Northwest 11, which is the stretch from Philmont to Chatham of the Harlem Valley Rail Trail. And when I mean plan, it's literally engineering plans for bridges and overpasses. It's permitting issues. It's coming up with the relationship with the towns for light maintenance. It's working out all of the complicated challenges so that we have a shovel-ready plan that we can then start fundraising on. The reason why I'm bringing this up is it's obviously relevant for Climate Smart in general, and the rail trail is a very important resource for our county. It's been a tremendous benefit to the southern part of the county where it's now coming up toward Hillsdale. And anyone that hasn't been on the rail trail down there in Dutchess should take your kids or go out on a bike or go for a run. It's amazing. And it's a great resource. At any rate, we are hoping that the Board of Supervisors can do a letter of recommendation or support for the grant. And so it's a pretty simple ask. It's not asking for any commitment from the county at this point. And in the future, I'm not sure there will be an ask at all, because these are state parks that essentially run the rail trail with sometimes with local support for law enforcement and light maintenance with the towns and perhaps the county. But we're not even there yet. So right now, that's where we're at. I'll pause to see if there's any comments. And then I prepared a resolution, which may not be necessary, but I thought it would be helpful that we could consider to just urge a letter of support, which I believe is already kind of in the works, that Supervisor Simmons is already working on that letter, because we do need it by the middle of June for the grant. So I don't know if anyone has any comments or questions. Happy to open it up.
So yes, David, this is Ron. I think Craig is on the call. He was going to listen in this morning, but he did bring a resolution to county government, and it has gone through county government and finance. It'll be voted on at the June full board meeting, and for the chairman to sign that letter of support. So
great. So we can pass a resolution just to add our 2 cents and our support to it, which I think would be great. It doesn't sound like it's necessary, which is really, really great. So thank you, Supervisor Knott and Supervisor Simmons, for your leadership on this. Again, it's a planning grant, so this is going to be years in the works, but this is how it starts. And this is the first time in my 10 years or so in the area where I've actually seen real momentum in the part of the rail trail that's closest to where we are, where I am. And I know there's been some stops and starts over the years, so it's a really exciting opportunity to help these towns, help the businesses in these towns, and our quality of life in general. Is that you, Supervisor Simmons? I heard someone on a 518 number.
Yes, it's Bill Rohr from TGW Consulting. I had to dial in by phone.
So Dave, I've invited Bill. Bill is a grant writer for the county, and he wanted to listen in on today's meeting to see
great.
If you had sent us some information on grants, and Bill does a number of grant writing for the county. So
welcome, Bill. Thank you. So John, did you have a question?
Yeah, could you clarify again what the stretch of the trail is?
You please, sorry, John.
Some of the travel and come on.
Yeah, Bill, we need you to mute if you could. Thank you. There you go.
I got it. All right, go ahead, John.
Okay, so could you clarify what the sections of the trail is that's being included in, hopefully, in this grant? I'm interested, of course, in the section that goes up, includes parts of Clabrook and Philmont.
Right. This would actually start just outside of Philmont to the north. the getting through Philmont section is a whole nother riddle with a whole nother bunch of questions. There's definitely discussion that's happening there, and I think it'll be a discussion point. But the planning grant would specifically start on Maple Avenue, just north of Philmont, across from the DPW. I believe CLC owns an acre of land, or maybe the Rail Trail Association does, which would be suitable for a parking lot there. And that would then allow people to bike down into Philmont, and then eventually we'll figure out how to get across the bridge and next to Summit Lake and south to 1123 toward Taconic High School and on. So it starts in Philmont, goes north, just short of the village of Chatham. It'll stop just where before the railroad depot, that's Kinderhook Bank, or not Kinderhook Bank, Community Bank. And in that area, just before you get into kind of the downtown of Chatham. But all that is, to be determined. But that's the general area that will be the focus.
Super, thank you.
Sure. Terrence.
Yeah, thanks. I was just curious. I missed the beginning. So this would be who's applying for the grant and who would be kind of monitoring or completing the grant?
The Harlem Valley Rail Trail Association is applying for the grant with support from the towns and leadership in the towns that are most, affected, and obviously support from the county as well in terms of a letter of support, and a bunch of local businesses who are submitting letters of support. So that the grant will be approximately $300,000, of which, and then another $300,000 or so would have to be raised. We estimate that the cost, because again, these are engineering plans for many bridges and overpasses, dealing with permitting issues and regulatory issues, easements over private land. There's a lot to figure out, so it's an expensive plan. Dan.
Yeah. I've been on the Rail Trail Board for decades, so I'm thrilled by this news. I just wanted to make clear that it's not clear if the trail will be part of any state park. That would be the Rail Trail Association's dream. But as of now, it's part of a state park only because it happens to go past Taconic State Park, and they've agreed to maintain it up through Hillsdale. But just want to make clear that's still an open question as to whose maintenance responsibility would be beyond Hillsdale.
Thank you, Dan. That's an important question, and that is something that would be determined through this negotiations through the planning process.
Right.
So I have this. If there's no other discussion, I have a resolution which I can read, which I think is good for us to voice our support. And I would like to propose the resolution. I'll pull it up on the screen here. Give me a minute here. And then we can move on. Let me just see. See if I can get this. Bear with me. Okay. I can't share my screen. Go to. Okay, that's annoying. I will read this. Okay, it's not that long. Whereas the Harlem Valley Rail Trail is a public recreational trail spanning 46 miles from Wassaic to Chatham, with 23 miles currently complete and open to the public, with over 150,000 visitors annually. Whereas the rail trails are a safe and accessible recreational resource given the smooth surface and non-motorized access, making them ideal for families. And whereas the Harlem Valley Rail Trail Association is pursuing a planning grant from the New York Environmental Protection Fund to support a shovel-ready plan for the undeveloped section of the trail between Philmont and Chatham. And whereas the increased trail brings additional business opportunities to existing and new businesses in our towns and villages without increasing traffic from automobiles. And whereas the section of the trail from Ghent to Chatham will serve as a source of alternative transportation, enabling trail users to access shopping along Route 66 without automobiles. And whereas the Climate Smart Communities program promotes the development of non-motorized trails, now therefore be it hereby resolved that the Columbia County Climate Smart Communities Task Force respectfully requests that the Columbia County Board of Supervisors submit a letter of support for the Harlem Valley Rail Trail Association's planning grant application. Pretty simple and straightforward. And if there's no discussion, then we'll take a motion. Is that, John, is that a motion?
Yeah, I move.
Okay, great. Any seconds?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Bill. All in favor, raise your hands. All
Aye.
against, raise your hands and say no, so I can hear you. I can't see everyone, if anyone is against. Great. Why would you be, right? It's like apple pie and baseball. But anyway, I mean, there are sticky issues. This is not a done deal. That's why we need a planning grant to figure out what's possible, what we can afford, how we're going to do it. But this is going to be a huge boon to these towns and to our county. So thank you for your time on that, and we'll keep you updated. That's really a big part of why we exist here. So in a few minutes, Chris is going to join us from Plug-in Stations, Chris Carmody. And before that, we'll just keep moving along. I did have a question for Supervisor Knott while we're kind of eating up a couple minutes. I don't know if you're on. Yeah, great. We were curious to learn, not now, but perhaps at the next meeting, if we could get an update on where the county's at with the EV, the municipal EV charging infrastructure that you've been pursuing, and also the EV fleets for the county fleet, or a transition. And I know that this is something that you've been working on for many years. We previously met and talked about this as a group, and we talked about gathering information to support your efforts, and that's really our role, to support your efforts and to gather information. So it'd be helpful, perhaps at the next meeting, if you could give us an update on, what is happening and where the opportunities are and how we as a group could be helpful. I think it might be time for us to have, as the community solar project is kind of ongoing and working forward, and as the climate carnival and climate carnival will come and go, and all that work will have passed, and then the benchmarking is wrapping up thanks to Wendy's great work and the controller's office. So looking forward to kind of the next set of issues that we can lean into and support. We're hoping that we can provide some help there, and perhaps gather information. We can even help with writing grants. I know you have grant writing capacity, so that's great. But perhaps it's gathering information in support of that. So I was just going to make a request that at the next meeting, perhaps you could give us a quick update so we can have a discussion as to how we could be supportive.
Okay. So yeah, at last month's meeting, we did talk about, asking the committee to try and assess, where there's a public need, because the county could be doing two different things. I mean, we need infrastructure for fleet vehicles that we're trying to bring into our EV fleet or to our fleets. But then, as you know, some of that funding opportunity is enhanced if we can offer it to the public at the same time too. And I don't know if there's a need for that. So Jolene has told me that at the Climate Carnival, that you are working on trying to collect some of that information from where the need for infrastructure is. I think I have met with plugins, and we've identified a couple county parcels that we could work them on. I'm still looking at, where to best put the EV charging for fleets because of the fleet status in the county, and that's an ongoing little process. The commissioner and I met with union representatives a while ago on that concerns about where we can park them and how we would get people to the charging stations if we were to go there. Still, the major problem is the availability of EV cars to add to the fleet. That's where we haven't brought any in just yet, but we need to keep moving on that. But yeah, I'll try and have some more information for next month, and I'm happy to listen to plugins today.
Great. I think we'll be taught, and Chris just joined us. Thank you, Chris.
Hey.
We were just talking, Chris, about related questions, not what the subject of today's presentation is, but the related questions of where the county is in its own fleets and EV transition to EVs, and also in the municipal charging infrastructure for those fleets specifically and for the public. Today, just to introduce Chris Carmody, thank you for joining us, Plug-in Stations Online. And I think you're calling in from Buffalo from the road, so thank you for
I'm in my mobile office here.
Appreciate it. And Chris has put together a presentation short just to kind of whet our appetites to talk about fast charging infrastructure, of which there's very little in the county, and where we might find some sweet spots to put some of that infrastructure in and take advantage of some of the funding opportunities that are either available now or will be shortly, and put ourselves in a position as a county and as the task force supporting the county to keep the ball moving forward. So with that, Chris, I'll turn it over to you. And thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Chris Carmody. I'm a resident of Ghent. I'm on the Climate Smart, or was on the Climate Smart Committee in Ghent for a while there, and we kind of stopped being as active as we were once. So I got into the whole EV charging thing, writing the grant for the town of Ghent, and it's actually the same grant that we're going to talk about today through the DEC to get funding for charging. So our company's Plug-in Stations were in Valencia, right next to Ichabod Crane. And we started in 2011. It was my boss and his friend, like, going out on weekends and installing level 2 chargers. And then it's since grown to be a much bigger operation. I joined about 5 years ago, and sort of since that time, it's really been taking off as an industry. I'm out here today. This is our biggest project to date, but it's really cool. We're in Buffalo at the bus company, the NFTA out here, and we're installing a 7 megawatt substation that's going to power a depot full of electric buses. So it's like a 120 bus depot that's going to be converted over to electric over the course of the next decade. And so we're bringing in the big power for that, and then installing these chargers that are like pantograph units that come down onto the roof of the bus and power them at night. And so the operators aren't involved plugging in, plugging out, and there's no claptrap on the ground for anybody to run into. And so anyway, I'm just excited. It's going well out here. Just looking at the pads, and the charging cabinets are in now. And so anyway, that's like, so we're getting into some bigger projects as a company. And so anyway, but I'm very much interested in electrification for Columbia County. I think the fleet angle is really an important one to be looking at, and it sounds like you guys are discussing that. There's a lot of possibilities with fleet charging that I think people overlook, not to get too far into it, but you don't need to bring in as much power to charge your fleet, especially if they have somewhere to sit and charge overnight. Like, you can get away with even less than level 2 power charging. So I like the opportunity to talk about that stuff with you too, because I think it can be done a lot cheaper than most people are kind of defaulting to doing it. But anyway, so today talk about the possibility of to put in fast charging in Columbia County, just to sort of explore that idea. So I put together a couple slides. I want to just make this more of a discussion, and stop me when you have questions or want to talk about something, rather than me just kind of talking through slides, because I don't enjoy that very much. All right, so let me grab my presentation here. Full screen. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is just generally, what are we seeing in the market? Is this electric vehicle thing for real? And I think, when I started with this company 5 years ago, I wasn't so confident that it was. But in the, maybe about three years ago, I've pretty much turned the corner in my own thinking, just be like, this is definitely happening. There's a lot of things pushing us towards electrification, climate goals being an important part of it, but also just economics. It's far cheaper to drive per mile driving electric. You're spending about a third of the cost versus gas that you are to drive a mile if you're charging at your house. So, to me, that makes all the difference. Is like people just spending less to drive, I think, is going to be what drives this as much as our climate goals.
Chris, sorry to interrupt, Chris. Can
No,
you
no.
hit slideshow again? I'm not seeing it. I don't know if anyone else is seeing full slideshow.
Oh.
What are you seeing?
Just the slide. I mean, you could also just enlarge the slides so that they're not at 109%. They're just a little bit bigger if it's not showing up for some reason. But we're not seeing the slideshow, and it's hard to read the. I'm seeing the PowerPoint screen. I think that's what
Okay.
with the slides on the side, not the slideshow. It's just hard to read some.
Oh, that's weird.
If you zoom it in a little more, a little less.
Well, and click on the presentation mode.
Yeah.
Well, so when I did that, then it
didn't
shows you the wrong screen. Here's what I'll do.
Okay.
I think I can do it this way. Sorry, I'm used to Teams.
Sometimes, right? Different. Sometimes if you select desktop versus
Yeah, I'll
the
just do
PowerPoint,
the weird.
that.
All right, you guys are gonna get to see yourself for a second here. All right, is that better?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
perfect. Thank you.
Sorry about that. So here's what we're seeing is, the first thing to sort of take off was the hybrid electric vehicles, which I think are still a great option for a lot of people. So that kind of took off a little bit earlier, around 2004. So we didn't really start to see EVs proper until 2010, 2011 here. And then, I kind of took the data from 2016 on. We generally say we're predicting a 30% year over year growth in the EV industry. So David asked me to tell him why, and so I just kind of mapped out where we are in each of these years based on this data from the Department of Energy. So I think this data collection was through the first half of 2021, and so we've actually seen a lot of growth in the second half of 2021. I mean, this is annualized, so it's not half of what they're seeing, but even the first quarter of 2022 is significantly higher than first quarter 2021. So but at any rate, so this is kind of our level of increase. We kind of stumbled a little bit during the COVID years, and so if I average that all out, we're looking at like a 23% year over year growth. So it's hard to map exactly, but just so you know where some of our assumptions of growth come in.
Hey, Chris, this is Tara. I'm just curious, when you say hybrid electric vehicles, you mean plug-in hybrid electrics, or you mean?
Well, I think the DOE here is they're meaning just like regular Priuses.
Okay.
I mean, just based on the year, I think that's got to be true.
Yeah, I didn't think that there was that many hybrid plug-in vehicles in 2004. So, okay, just curious. Thanks.
Yeah. Hey, Tara, how are you?
I'm good, Chris. Good to see you.
So moving on here. So, locally, this is all kind of growing towards like, what are we expecting the usage to be in Columbia County if we put in some stations? So this is a list of fast charging sites that I have access to the back end data because we built most of them for the New York Power Authority. So I'm dividing these into two buckets, and the ones that are highlighted yellow are chargers that are in a municipal downtown area, and the ones that are kind of this tan color are more like along travel corridors. And that's going to become relevant because we're going to talk about City of Hudson being sort of like that municipal downtown, and then some of the stuff closer to the Taconic and the Berkshire connector will be more like the transit corridor type. So you can see, overall we're dispensing 2,300 kilowatt hours per station, and that will make more sense soon. And so, and then time with David is like, sort of what are our goals here as a county for putting this stuff out there? It sounds like the real reason we want to put these fast chargers out there is, yes, to support county fleets, but also mainly just to kind of encourage EV drivers to come to Columbia County, and more so to encourage Columbia County residents and regional residents to feel comfortable driving EVs. Does that sound accurate, David?
Yeah, I think that's right. Those, the fleets and the municipal charging infrastructure is really a separate discussion, which I know that you've been having with Ron's office and others over time. And that's an important discussion, but not really what we're talking about here. Yeah.
Yeah. So that leads me to think, what's important for us to have in a public charging site. So, obviously it's got to be open to the public, ideally not in a paid parking lot, although there's some flexibility there. For drivers, you want to have amenities. You're going to figure at the level of fast charging that we're looking at, you're probably going to have people there for half an hour or so. So, you definitely want to have some bathrooms nearby, something to eat, and some sort of attraction would be great. Some entertainment, like a restaurant is could count, but like a park or something for them to do while they're out charging. Another important thing to have is 3-phase power. So the way we see that, basically you just walk out, look at the telephone pole. If there's 3 wires at the top there, then you have 3-phase power. If there's fewer than that, then you're looking at single-phase power, which makes it impossible to put in DC fast charge without the utility coming out and doing extensive work to add another phase or another 2 phases out there. Another nice to have is it being close to travel corridors. And then finally, the owner, whoever owns that parcel, is going to need to grant an easement to the county, or if it's on county-owned land, then great, you don't need to worry about that. Just as a reference point, like the station that we put in for the town of Ghent is technically on Village of Chatham property, so we ended up doing an intermunicipal easement there to allow us to put that charger in that lot. And it was, the lawyers had to look at it, but there's sort of this template that the DEC provided that made it a pretty easy process. It was a couple hours of review on either side, but it went through smoothly. So, those are the things that I'm looking for when I'm trying to pick a site. I also just grabbed off of PlugShare, which is a great resource to see where chargers are. I filtered this so that you're just looking at fast charge sites. And the only one that is in the county is this one in Skodak, which might even actually be up in Nassau County. So there's nothing on the fast charge side in the county, although I know that they put in that Tesla site down here at that Stewart's right before you go over to Catskill. But that hasn't made it to PlugShare yet. So essentially, this is a desert of fast charging as we sit today. So then we started looking at the DOT data. So this map is showing how many it's like average auto. I don't know. It's like the average number of cars per day, basically, that go through each road. And you can see, like, on that section of I-90, the Berkshire connector there, like that's the heaviest traffic in the county. And then sort of orange, and it goes from that purple down to green. So you see, like, the highest traffic corridors are right here at that Berkshire connector, right before you get onto I-90 going up US 9, and then down in the city of Hudson. Like, those are the high traffic areas within the county. And this is just kind of a closer snapshot of those areas, but I think we're all relatively familiar with those spots. So then, for me, it's like trying to find something that makes sense in these areas, but also makes sense from a driver perspective, as far as having the amenities that we were talking about previously. So, I don't have any specific site ideas necessarily, but just kind of want to what I think the conditions would be for choosing a site, if that makes any sense. So any thoughts on these locations here?
Hey, Chris,
Yeah.
what would be, how feasible would it be to upgrade level 2 to a fast charger. Like we have in the village here, level 2 in the municipal parking lot. And it gets a lot of usage now with all of the farmers markets and the businesses that are opening here.
Kinderhook.
Goes through
It's,
9.
yeah, Kindred Village.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you could, I mean, it's essentially like there's nothing, unfortunately, nothing really usable because the two systems operate at a different voltage and a sort of a different scale of power. So
Would they have to upgrade the electrical service from National Grid?
yeah, and basically, I mean, we basically have to rip out everything we put in there in order to do that.
All right.
The only thing that you would really be able to save is the pipe that goes under the sidewalk
Yeah.
from the utility pole there over to the sign.
Okay.
Unfortunately, and it's just
Yeah.
because you're operating at a higher voltage and the utility, you know, we have different transformers and put in entirely different service equipment.
Yeah.
But you know, space is important too, and we shouldn't discount, you know, having a good site that everyone knows is a site and is established as an EV charging area. Like there's a lot of value there, even though it doesn't come in the form of electrical equipment.
Yeah. I've been talking to some business owners here who have parking lots. Haven't gotten a lot of positives. Some kind of say, yeah, but I'm really busy now. One place is still trying to open. So
yeah,
but a fast charger would probably be the best bet right now, I think, for them anyway. Would you say?
I mean, that's
so?
a great spot to have a fast charger, right? If there's a restaurant there that people
Yeah.
will be going to.
Okay.
I mean, so there's two ways to think about it. So that's a good charger for what I don't see happening is a lot of people going out of their way if they're kind of passing by on a longer road trip. I don't see them ending up in Kinderhook, even if there's a charger there to sort of lure them that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing. They're trying to build up business here, tourist business, restaurants. There's like 2 or 3 different places that are just in the
Right, on the
process
cusp.
of opening. Yeah. We have high hopes for a small place.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love Kindred Village, and I live like 5 minutes from there.
Yeah.
Mark has a question or a comment.
Yeah, I just
sorry, I
wanted,
can't see.
Yeah, no,
go ahead.
I'll call it out for you, Chris.
no problem. Hey guys, so I drive these roads a lot with my EV, and there's fast chargers on the thruway and also on the Mass Pike in Lee. And so,
Yep.
like anybody using the Berkshire connector just for high-speed travel is probably covered already. I think the value to our county is to place fast chargers where it's going to bring in business, and you know, maybe a place like Hudson or Chatham might be more strategic, because the people who are just driving through the state are they're gonna find a way to charge on the highways anyway. So I think the economic opportunity is more to place it within our own communities.
Yep.
Denell Collins, Supervisor Collins.
Yeah, I was just looking at the map there. There's a convenience store right off of the Taconic State Parkway on Route 295 in Chatham that I believe has 3-phase power. It's like Grand Central Station on Fridays and Sundays. You know, it's popped up with a food truck here and there, gas station, service station.
Is that the one where the computer place is or used to be?
Oh, the faux Radio Shack, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. But
I
I don't know
that-
if that would be a county initiative or, you know, an encouragement with the local business that owns much of that property.
So from my perspective, the economics of operating a DC charger look very bad if you're not supported by funding. And this DEC funding is only available to municipalities. So I think there's a good argument to be made for having the county own it on an easement on that land. I could see them saying, no, we want to operate this site on our own, but we can get into it a little bit more later when we look at the economics of it. But just the cost of electricity for the station is based on the output of the station, like the total possible output, and not how many kilowatt hours you're putting into cars. But you can only sell the kilowatt hours. So until there's like a nice continuous usage, then you're not going to be able to pay for your electricity. So you're essentially losing money for a few years as drivership picks up.
Chris,
So,
oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Just had a question while we're looking
Yeah.
at the maps, and encourage others to comment with their knowledge as well. But if you're the Taconic, I mean, I guess it might just be a Tesla station in Fishkill, down south of the county, but there's not really anything along the Taconic. And then what happens? This is for you too, Mark, as a user. What happens if you're coming up the Taconic and you're not heading toward Mass? You're heading to the New York Thruway, to the west. Where's the next station? There's probably something not too far off, but is there something that?
So there's a fast charger in LaGrangeville.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's at a top. That's at a
How
top.
far is, how far
Yeah.
is that from when you come up the Taconic and you turn onto the Thruway?
It's like a couple minutes. It's really, that's
Yeah.
one that I would classify as a travel corridor site.
Right.
That one gets a ton of usage. That's the highest usage site out of all 14 or whatever I have here.
So that area then is covered, like Mark said, with that station, and then going to the east in Lee. It sounds like that's covered. I don't know if there's any.
Well, the Lee, like the Mass travel plaza sites are all relatively low power. So, we would be putting in a site that has equal or greater power available to drivers. Most of these sites, like the LaGrangeville site, is going to be a higher power than I would recommend trying to handle as the county. But in terms of, I think you're, in comparison to Lee, it's a pretty viable competition, at least that you'd be giving them. Like, I don't think it's necessarily going to be better for people to charge and leave versus pulling off a little bit onto 295 or whatever it is in that area, and provided it's relatively close, and you can
Right.
get there off the highway.
That makes sense. So so this is, just for discussion, this is how we would start narrowing down on the viable locations and, work toward a proposal for a grant, getting into the nitty gritty of where. And then any discussion on other locations from the group, or questions, comments, anything the city of Hudson is interesting, or further south on the Taconic. I don't know if the traffic warrants that in either case.
Yeah, I had pulled those. Just here's all the Taconic exits just with the traffic data. So, as you can see, most of them are much lighter usage. But on the other hand, if there's one that's out there that has a very good amenity, like one of those diners, Martindale, or I've been talking with the town of Taconic too, and they've been working with the owner of the West Taconic Diner there. So if that were to get looped into a larger county project, I'm sure they'd be willing to work together. It's probably some of the same people. But something to think about too is, like, what is that amenity that you're offering to drivers, and do you sacrifice the prime location for having a better offering in that regard?
Right.
And as far as City of Hudson, I think that, we have those level 2s. I should have checked the usage of those before I got on this call. I didn't. But there's the 3 dual ports in the lot behind the city hall that have been there for 2 or 3 years. But I think there's enough, like, you're going to get a lot of EV drivers coming up from the city. I mean, you see that if you go down there on a Saturday or Sunday. And those people are maybe not going to want to sit at that level 2 charger for 5 hours while they go around. They might just say, oh, let's go in, get something quick to eat, and charge while we're doing that. I think it's one that could see a lot of use, even though it's not near the larger travel corridors per se.
Right. Supervisor Knott had a comment.
So yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody, we're working with the county has been working, leasing some land to a company, Beta Tech there to do high power charging station at the Columbia County Airport. And they have offered to do some, car things in that parking lot that would be open to the public. Maybe we could get them to look at a high speed thing because they're bringing in superpower for helicopters and things there. So,
Oh, really? That's
yeah.
cool.
So get your electric helicopters.
Yeah, I was about to say.
That's interesting. Thank you, Supervisor Knott. That's another. So any other comments? I mean, this is just a preliminary discussion, just to kind of whet our appetites, get us thinking about, how we would narrow down a potential site that we would focus on supporting the development of. So we can move forward, I think, Chris. And if anyone has any comments on this.
And then, so I apologize. So I kind of thought previously, so I just did a webinar for municipalities, and I didn't know how many or if anybody was able to attend that. It's just kind of some of the same stuff that we covered on that. But I think it's just useful to go through just so everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, I think just for to make sure that we are efficient in time, I think the most important thing from what we talked about, what I think you have in this presentation, is the financing, and
Sure.
So what the process would look like, and in terms of getting money to make this something that doesn't come out of the municipal accounts.
Yeah, sure.
We can.
So I'm just going to skim this to provide a frame of reference, but
Sure.
I'll share this after the presentation when I hang up here, and you guys can look through it in a little more detail.
Great.
But basically, our recommendation, we bring in a new piece of service equipment. So it's just like a little cabinet that looks like this. We're recommending putting in a pair of these charge point chargers, which put out 125 kilowatts together, or 62.5 to 2 cars. So it provides some flexibility, but also some higher output. So then, here's the budget for that work that we're describing. Charging equipment is in this top section. The make ready, which we're saying is the site and the electrical work that you need to do in order to install the chargers. And then we bundle in 2 years of services, so software and Assure, which is the like parts and labor warranty, more or less. So all that stuff together comes in around $160,000, just as a budgetary number, which is obviously a lot. And unfortunately, like, that has to be paid up front before the DEC or the utilities will pay you as a rebate. So, that cash is an outlay. So the incentives that we have to help pay for this are, there's 2 different incentives available from the utilities. So this is true for all the utilities in New York State. Will pay for 90 to 100% of the make ready costs for public use stations. So, and then it's capped at 367 kilowatts. So basically, that project that we're discussing, they would pay for 95% of the first $45,000 that we spend in here. So that helps knock out this make ready costs, right? And then I'm going to skip over this utility for a plug for a second, and then the New York State DEC ZEV program is coming back. So this program has been around for, I think, like 5 years at this point. But they keep renewing it every year, and they plan to renew it again very soon, as I understand it. And they'll cover 80% of everything in the entire project, including the first 2 years of electricity. So we just kind of like give them an estimate of what we think the electrical is going to be, and they roll that into the grant total. And then you have to prove that you actually spent that, and they'll reimburse you based on that. But at any rate, so the structure of that grant, they'll pay you up to they'll cover a project up to $250,000 per site. So that well covers our $160,000 project. Caps at $500,000 per municipality. So really 3 sites would be the maximum, assuming we go with that general layout that I am suggesting. So it covers everything, 20% match on the part of the municipality. So that match you can do in labor from municipal people. Like if you guys want to do the excavation, that could be covered as the 20%. Some towns will put in, these parking spaces are costing us X, so they're rolling that into the match. And then that, like I mentioned, they'll pay for your electricity for the first 2 years. Another important thing is, everything, I'm just emphasizing, everything's got to be paid up front and then they reimburse. And then important point is the contract period under the grant is 2 years. So if everything's just really going sideways and it's costing more to operate, you have that kind of fallback plan of just shutting the site down. I don't think that that's going to be necessary in any of these projects, but you have that as a fallback plan. And then the grant is time consuming, and I don't know if anyone's gone through it before. I know Tara has some experience with it. It's a lot to take on, but we have a lot of resources that we can help. Hold on a second. I gotta mess with the office conditions here.
Chris, do you have any idea what the timing is for the announcement of the new round from the state?
They were saying, late spring. So for me, I think that's like any day now.
Yeah. And then what's the window of opportunity? I know there's a limit on the grant. There'll probably be a lot of interest in applications. What do you think is a reasonable time frame if they announce in the next month or so? How much time would you say is realistic to get it done? And also, how quickly do you think we need to be on this in order to be competitive?
So I think, the first thing is going to be to try to identify these sites. So I think if we get past that hurdle soon, I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. The applications are reviewed on a rolling basis and approved on a rolling basis. So it is really kind of critical to get an application in within the first couple months, if possible, to ensure that you'll be approved. We did 2 parallel projects with Town and Village of Red Hook, and the village got theirs in 3 weeks later and didn't end up getting approved because they said, oh, we'd already given away all this funding. So that's important to note. So I would target trying to have it done in about 2 months.
Okay. So, and what else to happen in your minds to help us select the location so we can start building around that location?
So I think we have to identify like which parcel and who's hosting the site, right? So you're going to want to talk, just grabbing that 295 place as an example. Like, do we talk to the gas station, the computer place? You got to probably have some sort of at least verbal agreement from the person who owns the property before we can really move forward with designing a site based on that property. I can put together a site design in like a week. It's not a big lift for me. I'll just want to go out there and meet with the owner and make sure that we're not putting the stations in a place that is going to interrupt their other business. And so, some of the deliverables, and I kind of pulled our application from the town of Ghent here. So just to give a sense of the stuff that you have to put in, it's like this letter from the business association, like just saying, hey, we want this charger to come in. Here's your plan for monitoring and reporting. And a lot of the stuff we can just kind of copy paste this stuff. We put in this site plan, which looks quaint to me now that I've been making the more sophisticated ones. But then your operation maintenance. So it's like all these like deliverables that for the most part are copy paste from this application, but that also, they have to take some specific information about like why this is a good site and make the case that for the usage and for the amenities that are offered there.
Right. It doesn't sound like, I think the reality is we need, before we get started, we need a commitment from the municipality, whether it's the county or a town or a village, to upfront and to commit to this process before we can actually write a grant. Is that right? I mean, there's no way you can write this. It's being written on behalf of the municipality, and the municipality will be expected to pay the cost up front, right?
Yeah, I mean, the grant writing, I don't know. I mean, we're still trying to kind of sort through that as a company, and at the minimum, we would offer help with writing the grant. And obviously we'll put in the deliverables that are technical or the budget, like we can put all that stuff together. But somebody's kind of got to take the reins with the grant writing and manage the process.
Sure.
And so we don't necessarily we had someone who was working on grant writing, but she's kind of moved on to do some other stuff.
Right. Well, the county has capacity to write grants. It does it all the
Okay.
time. There's a grant writer who's actually on the call right now for the county. The question really is in terms of getting a commitment from the county. If this is a county effort, we would need the Board of Supervisors to commit to a project that if they were to get the grant, they would be putting the money up front, right? And to commit to writing the grant.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm fine with, if you want, like on my end, like I'm happy to go through the grant process. Like I don't need that commitment from you guys in order to put in my deliverables and to kind of help through the process. But and even if you wanted to just get the grant and then see if you wanted to move forward, I'd be okay with that, just because it's Columbia County and I live here and I want to do what you guys is going to help everybody here. But it would be certainly better to have somebody sign off at the county level and say, hey, we're pursuing this grant. And
well, the Board of Supervisors would have to sign off just to pursue, or the I don't know who exactly would have to sign off short of the full board just to pursue the grant. I believe maybe Supervisor Knott can inform us on that process. And I appreciate, thanks, Chris, because we appreciate all the support that you're offering, as a member of the community here, without having an assurance that the county would move forward. I think in an ideal world, the county knows what it's getting into, prepares to do it, and commits to it. In an ideal world, I don't know if that's possible within the time frame of this grant. So that's what I'm trying to understand in this process. And I don't know if Supervisor Knott, if you're still on, if you've got any or if you're available to comment on that. We can also follow up if not.
Yeah, no, I'm still here. So this information is interesting. Actually, the controller and I did take part in a webinar here recently, and it kind of went over much of this types of funding because I wanted him to be involved in how we would proceed with this. And I think we left it with him that the county was going to identify a location, and at least this was for our own infrastructure needs. But then he would want us to do an RFP. Applying for the grant, that's another story. I think we could apply for it, but that is a question of whether we go with one particular vendor and go with their information. You can apply for the grant and then do the RFP, I guess, later. But
yeah, I mean, that's what we did in Ghent, is we applied for the funds using the deliverables from one vendor, and then it did go out to bid after the award.
Yeah. So I think it was just identifying. I mean, you're kind of talking about trying to ask the county to fund something on a private parcel. That's a whole nother process. I'm not ready to commit to any of that. The county could be ready to apply for something for its own infrastructure uses, and within the city of Hudson, someplace where we can keep some fleet cars, possibly in the near future. But the other type of project you're talking about at 295 is a whole different level of private, and I would think that you'd be better to encourage the private landowners to do that.
Right. I think the issue, Supervisor Knott, is that this deal doesn't work with the private applicant.
Right.
That's the problem, is that there's no grant opportunities for private businesses to get a DEC grant like
Yeah.
the municipality. And I think the other point that Chris had made, which is that it's actually not a challenge legally, or hasn't been in the past, or logistically, in getting an appropriate easement on private property for a municipality to actually own the charging infrastructure, and it sits on that private property, because it supports the private businesses. They want it there. It brings business. So even if they don't own it, and in the case of a DC fast charger, it sounds like that you need some time to build up enough usage before it starts paying for itself, which is why the utility funding for electricity for 2 years is so valuable, to give you that ramp to get up to a point where the county is actually making a little money on it and not working at a deficit. Chris, is that fairly accurate?
Yeah, that's very well said. Yeah,
So that's why
economic
we
growth.
would want to see about pursuing the best location for a fast charger for the public, and that's distinct from the good work that's ongoing with the municipal infrastructure for fleets and for the government primarily. And that's what this opportunity presents. It sounds like we could have a path forward where we urge the board to pursue a grant, or the county government to pursue a grant, with the understanding that it would then go out to bid if we get the grant. And at that point, there would be a decision that would have to be made by the county to put the money up front. Um, is that right, Chris?
Yeah, I mean that's how a lot of folks have approached it previously. And there's also state contract stuff. So the charging hardware itself, that can all be sold through OGS. There's some things that go out to bid and some that don't necessarily have to. I don't know.
But here's another angle that I just want to throw out there for discussion. I mean, usually municipalities might be willing to do this like you did in Ghent or the Village of Chatham, because the Village of Chatham then, or the Village of Ghent, or the town of Ghent, inspires business there. But now we're talking about having our county residents pay for something that's going to enhance the business of one gas station in the area, I guess is what we're trying to do. So I question that whole process. I mean, this whole idea of the 295 gas station is all new to me, but that's a pretty remote area and there's limited businesses at that site. I can see where it would be a financial benefit to them to have an EV charging station there, because people might come off of interstate and shop there while they're there. But why should the county residents all pay for that project? I'd rather stay focused on our own infrastructure needs.
So I kind of skipped over the economics of the operation models, but you'll start off in year 0 with a surplus of $40,000 or so, based on stacking those two grants together. And then you're going to lose money for a couple of years, but you're not going to lose more than that $40,000. And then the county should start seeing revenue from that station. I'll just bring up my model, and again, I'll share this at the end, so you can look into it in more detail. But so you're starting with this $45,000 surplus based on those two grants getting stacked. Then operationally, you're losing money for 3 years, but your cash out is still, you still got an $8,000 war chest left over there, and and then as we get into the out years, and assuming that the growth of the EV drivership is continuing the way we think it is, then you're going to start pulling in some revenue for the county. So I see what you're saying, and it's certainly helpful to this private business to do this, but also it should be a boon to the county.
Chris, what's this based on? This is based on an average of these DC
So
fast.
this 2250. Yeah, I just took the average of those
Right,
sites that we're looking at.
Yep.
So that was these
Yeah, I
here.
think Supervisor Knott, you raise a good point, which is there's a difference between one gas station in a transit corridor versus a whole town, with multiple businesses that are being supported. But this shouldn't be. I think the bigger point is what Chris just said, which is this should not be an outlay of tax dollars. It's supporting a private business. This is facilitating a grant through the county, or a couple of grants, to make this cost neutral and not have it be a burden on the taxpayers in any way. In fact, it could lead to a small surplus and generate revenue. And so in that case, it's providing a public service to drivers in and out of the county, and therefore indirectly the businesses, not just that business, but the other businesses and residents of the county, which I think is a broad goal. And if it is revenue neutral or positive, then it's not tax dollars supporting one little business. And I think that you're right to be concerned about that and the opposition it could bring. Mark, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just want to underscore a bit from my own experience, having driven across like New Mexico and Arizona, which are very low on EV chargers. And like me and my sister ended up going to this town in Arizona that was like the last EV charger for like the next 300 miles. And we ended up stopping in that town twice and like, staying at a hotel there and like going to restaurants. And so I think in a county like ours, having a fast charger in a more of a central location, like a downtown location, is going to be an economic driver. Although it may not have the same usage numbers, like economic station itself, the economics may not be as attractive as like putting it on a gas station along the Taconic. But for the overall county economy and the businesses, it may be more favorable to put it like in downtown Chatham or Hudson. And I also like the idea of, maybe parking one of these stations along the electric trail, because that'll bring more people in for, both charging and using our bike trail there. So just want to underscore those trade-offs between like overall economic promotion versus.
So, where we looked at in the city of Hudson, we looked at locating these at the DSS parking lot, which isn't far at all from the Empire Trail, and you're in downtown Hudson, and it could serve both the needs of the county's infrastructure as well as the public. I don't think that when I priced that with plug-ins here originally, we talked about high-speed charging there, but there is plenty of available three-phase power right there close by, so that's a potential possibility. Then I guess some of the other questions I have is who's managing these? And I did have a good conversation with Craig Simmons this morning, who's got a little experience in, seeing the municipality own and operate and pay for these types of things. But I'm still trying to rationalize some of that. Is it better for the county just to own their own, or is it better to have somebody like plug-in stations maintain it in the future and run the bills, and who's paying those bills? So there's some questions I've got out there on that, but I think the location that we looked at with plug-in is still in Hudson is still a better facility to do that at, and it sounds like it would meet the needs of everybody.
Yeah.
Which is the DSS lot? Which is that? Over behind the
Railroad Avenue.
I'm just trying to picture it. So it's like
You know
on
where
State
the
Street.
central firehouse is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's kind of continue on down that same street.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did have you would find Ron came out and gave us a quote on that, and there is a quick map and a quote of locations there. I've been working with DSS to see how they felt it would impact it. I mean, if we had some fleet cars there to park at night, and then would it get some use during the day? That type of thing is. I was running that through DSS department right now, but that's a potential.
How far is that from the Empire State Trail. I know that the Empire State Trail comes down to North Second Street, right? Does it come
Yes,
through there? Does it come through like near Oakdale, near that building?
yes, you're not far away at all. Michael Hare's on, he might be better judge of that and this actual distance, but
It's 3 blocks, something like that. It's not very far indeed.
Okay. And then you also have, you know, you're what, like 4 or 5 blocks from Warren Street?
That's right.
yep.
So yeah, I mean, the question is, I know that there's an important municipal need for future fleets, green fleets in the county, and that is a government lot where I presume these cars are parked anyway. So that makes a lot of sense. The question is whether that would also work best for public charging in Hudson. I think this is great. We're starting to center around this idea that Hudson may be, for the points that Ron and Mark and others have brought up, that Hudson may actually be the or Chatham, but one of our towns may be a better spot. You know, the question is, what's the best location? What are our options too within Hudson or Chatham or any other town that we think? I mean, I think the smaller towns, it's harder and harder to justify this type of project, but it's just my opinion.
Yeah, David, not to get into too much of the weeds here, but the DSS lot would be great for the county government owned vehicles, but in spite of the fact that the distance away from Warren Street and the trail and so forth is not very much, it's really off the beaten track.
Yeah.
You know, you'd have to give somebody pretty detailed directions on just how to find the place.
Yeah. So that's an important question. I think just because we're not going to have a lot more time, I don't want to cut this off, but now we're getting to the weeds of it. I think what would make sense perhaps is to try to come to the next meeting with a specific proposed location or maybe a few locations, so we can promote that through the task force as a recommendation to move forward with the county. That would put us on a timeline, Chris, where you know, beginning of July, we would be potentially recommending something that would then have to go through the government, I believe the government committee, which happens the week after, and then it would have to go through the full board of supervisors to move forward with a proposal or a grant application, which would probably put us into August realistically before we could really have approval to move forward. That is unfortunately the timeline. We could, if that is not, you know, an acceptable timeline, I mean, I'd love to move forward quicker. If the sense of the group is that we recommend that we develop a site in the period of time and that the county moves forward, we could make you know, we could resolve to recommend that now. But I do think there's more work that has to be done to figure out, you know, what location needs to occur. And that work really is the work of the county government, not so much this task force. We can recommend and advise and help out gathering information. So perhaps it's, you know, what do you think about the timing? You mentioned before that this is really something that we need to jump on.
Yeah, I mean that's my sense of it. I think that there's a lot more eyes on this money right now. There was another program from NYSERDA that people were using to fund charging projects for a long time, and that's not available right now. So my concern is that there's more people waiting in the wings to kind of jump on this funding. And again, it's a rolling acceptance. So, you know, I can't say for sure, is August too late? I would guess probably not if we're really diligent about kind of working a parallel process and having the application in shortly after the approval. But, you know, I wouldn't want to push it too much beyond that. and again, I don't know. That's just my sense of it. I
Yeah.
don't know even what the total dollar value is going to be, or
Right.
if the numbers are going to change from what we're expecting. It's all
Well, the grant opportunity is not open yet, so we know it's coming.
correct.
And so, we have time. We would develop the site plan or recommendations, and the county would authorize some officials to identify, I don't know who they are exactly, which department, but to identify and finalize the site selection for the grant. So, I think we could move forward with a recommendation to, um, Tara's just saying there's a lot of interest in this round from municipalities. So I think she's reiterating this point that we need to move forward. It doesn't commit us to anything to say that we want to pursue this grant. It doesn't mean the county is on the hook just because it says, yes, we want to pursue this grant, obviously. So I don't think there's a downside, and there's a major upside to getting the ball moving here. So my recommendation would be that we recommend to the county to proceed with a grant and to an appropriate site selection, and that we'll provide any support we can in that process. I know, John, you have your hand up.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to mention that in the Stewarts is rebuilding their station at the 66 and 9H. And in the planning board hearings, they were asked about charging station, and they indicated that their approach is that to work with Tesla, perhaps to find places. So I realize there's a big difference between that private Tesla market and the municipal ones, but there may be places like that that we want to keep in mind when we think about siting, because that would certainly be a good site for place for anyways, who knows what. That's what they said about how they approach, and I thought that was interesting, and you probably have other similar situations in other towns.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting is with those Tesla chargers will charge Teslas, but they won't charge any of the other automakers' vehicles.
Yep.
Whereas Teslas can charge. I mean, they need an adapter to do it, and it's not a cheap adapter, but they can charge on these non-proprietary units that we install. And Stewart's works with, on the non-proprietary side, they work with the New York Power Authority. So we've built sites on a number of Stewart's for them. So yeah, I mean they have their pathway, but that doesn't rule them out as being another possible spot.
Nice.
Chris, I had another question about the benefits of, so there's this parallel effort that the county's been pursuing, Supervisor Knott at the lead, to build out infrastructure for more level 2 type charging for fleets in Hudson. Is there any kind of economies of scale of having a joint location? Or I know there are different technologies and different power, but is there any kind of benefit to having both at a location?
Honestly, I don't think it makes that much sense to co-locate. It ends up being the same cost or even more to co-locate, because then I need to provide a transformer to provide 2 different voltages, and the cost of doing that, it's a lot of times it's easier to set a separate service for the level 2s at a separate site.
Okay.
So it's probably cost equivalent to put them together or not. So unless you have a real reason to co-locate, I wouldn't do it just for cost sake.
And the other question that I think Supervisor Knott raised is administration and management. What is the realistic kind of responsibility of the county, let's say,
Yeah, I mean,
managing?
So the way it kind of works with ChargePoint, and there's a lot of different network and hardware providers, and we can get into those options. But if you go with the ChargePoint, what they're supposed to be doing as part of that Assure maintenance program is like monitoring the station, and if it goes down, they'll try to troubleshoot it remotely, and then if they can't fix it, they'll send somebody out there. Quite honestly, the timeline for them getting someone to site can be on the scale of like a month or something like that. In terms of day-to-day management. I manage the station for the town of Kent, and it's not under warranty, so everything falls on me to do it. But like I check into it like once a quarter, and so once the pricing is set, unless you're having any sort of issue with the station, there's not a lot of management to be done. Like it collects the payment from the drivers, automatically deposits it into I don't know what account we have it set to, but the appropriate operating account for the town again. And we set up similar system with the county. And as long as we have all the stations that you're installing on the same network, there's sort of one point of management for everything. And that's true. You can still manage the fleet chargers if they're also on the same network as the fast chargers. And you probably do want to have somebody with a little bit of training. Like I would say an hour of training or so for the right person is enough for them to be able to kind of keep their eye on things. As long as you kind of give it to the right person who's willing to learn a little bit and is interested in it. I think that it's not a huge load in terms of town or municipal employees.
Great. Okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments in general? Supervisor Collins.
Yeah, Chris, I just had a question as far as Ghent and what the county will do. You talked about ChargePoint. Do you not use ChargePoint in Ghent? Do you have some other?
No, we do use ChargePoint in Ghent.
Okay,
ChargePoint is like, sorry, go ahead.
Just because of the contract itself, the yearly contract is an expense that we have in Chatham, so it actually always puts us at a loss if we look at the revenue generated, the utilities paid, and the contract. So it's something that we've got to would have to prepare the county for, as this may lose money perpetually. Even though, obviously we know we all have to bear an expense to try to go into this new technology.
Yeah, so I think we've gotten smarter as a company since those two chargers were put in, and we're starting to think a little bit more about what the usage data is, and then factoring also those annual costs into our models. And quite honestly, I don't see a level 2 charger ever being like a substantial revenue source for many people. Like I see it more as an amenity to help kind of like drive these people, EV drivers, into town. So it's tough to swallow. I think on the level 2 side, especially the software costs for ChargePoint in particular, but they're sort of in line with the rest of the market. It can be frankly kind of rough. And does it make more sense to just leave the stations open and just allow people to plug in and charge and not try to collect the payment? Like you need that network software to collect the revenue from the drivers. But if that revenue from the drivers isn't offsetting the electrical cost plus the software cost, then it doesn't make sense to have the software in place. Does that make sense? So
can you just charge more? I mean, there's obviously a limit to how much you can charge, but can't you charge the equivalent amount to break even based on your usage data and just increase the charge?
Yeah, I would think at this point we should be able to tinker with that and improve the economics of it. But also I see the fast charge as being a different animal entirely in terms of, we kind of were thinking at the time, these level 2 chargers are going to be, people are going to be using them all the time. But like realistically, we see them used maybe like 3 or 4 hours a day. I mean, I should check the actual data, but nobody's relying on those chargers for anything as I see it now. So if I'm an EV driver, I'm going to go charge in my house. So my battery is 100% when I drive out the door. So if I drive into Chatham to go to the brewery or whatever, I can plug into that charger. It's nice as an amenity. I can top my charger off, but I don't need that charger to get back to my house because my battery is going to sustain me to go back. So, the case for that charger being a critical part of anybody's charging habits, I think, is a little bit lower. Whereas with the fast charger, if we're catching these people who are kind of en route going somewhere else, they need to charge somewhere. So they're going to have to come to a fast charger while they're out there. And that's sort of drawing them in, and supporting the local economy, but also, they're going to put a lot more kWhs into their car at that time than you do. You're sort of charging at a much slower rate on the level 2 charger, and you're not getting as much revenue per charge.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. Chris, I don't know if there are any other questions for Chris. We do have to move on, unfortunately, or fortunately, we've made a lot of progress. This is really helpful. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other last comments or questions from anyone? Okay. Thanks again, Chris, and we'll
Yeah.
be in touch. Have a
Yeah,
good trip.
thanks for having me. And any questions you guys come up with in the next few weeks, feel free to reach out. I'll send out the presentation to you, David.
Yeah, and then I'll send it out.
You can distro as needed. And yeah, I mean, I really want to be more of a resource. I'm a terrible salesperson, so I just want to like talk through how these things work and if it makes sense for you guys to put them in and where, and whatever you need, I'm here to support it.
Thank you, Chris. Have a
All
great.
right. Yep. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
All right. So it sounds like there's an opportunity here. There's definitely an opportunity here that could be beneficial to the county and could really step us up a level, literally. And it could be revenue neutral, although there are questions around that. It also sounds like we can proceed with a recommendation without, and the county could proceed, take that recommendation and decide to pursue a grant without committing itself to something, before actually understanding all of the details of how it would work. In my mind, that really suggests that we should recommend that the county does continue to pursue this opportunity so we don't miss the boat. According to Chris and Tara and others, I think it would be a great boon to the county, whether it's the city of Hudson, Chatham, or some other corridor that we identify. So those are my 2 cents. I want to open that up to any contrary thoughts or any other comments. All I hear are the birds chirping, and there are a lot of birds chirping.
Well, I agree with you, Dave. There you go. Just for a point of interest, one of our trustees is doing an analysis right now as to what the break-even point will be for us if we started charging as of June 1st. He put a minimal amount on it right now, but he's looking into electric costs and the cost of the Assure program that we have as well, and how to just, as a matter of fact, just to break even. And I think his background, he's pretty sure he can come up with a reasonable amount. And just to say, looking at the Charge Point website, where I can be administrator as well, there's a way of calculating the comparison between the cost of gasoline versus the electrical cost, and you can balance out your per hour number so that you come down. Well, now you can come down way below gasoline, but that also can, is a positive anyway. I'm just trying to give some positive as far as the economics go, because as far as I'm concerned, this is really, implementing these now is an encouragement to people to look to renewable energy as the ultimate in terms of our environment. So
there's also a reality that I've heard, and I don't know if this is true. We can't predict the future. That there are funds available now, and there are grants that are out there, and they may not be out there in perpetuity. They may not. We might hit a spot because of the state of the economy or a change in public policy where these grants aren't available, and then it becomes impossible for us to, unless the county wants to use tax dollars, it becomes impossible for us to actually imagine putting in one or more of these fast chargers, which is essential to the future of the vehicles that are transitioning over the next decade. So now is the time to take advantage of this. And again, I don't think it commits us to anything to see if we can take advantage of it. Supervisor Simmons, good to see you.
How's everybody doing? It's great conversations. Good to see you. But yeah, Getting Chatham had been working on trying to become a little bit cost neutral until we got the charge point bill. That threw our figures away, and it's funny that we're talking about it because I've been working on it this week, trying to figure out a new formula. I was going to talk to you, Supervisor Collins, when I got the numbers together. But yeah, it's coming as a loss again, and so we're going to work on that. But as far as locations, on my other hat that I wear, we do tow on the Parkway, and seems to be a big section that's tough for folks. Two cases right off the bat. We're getting cars off the Parkway and trying to find them adequate charging station. The one ended up being a Tesla that we had to haul quite a ways. So in another case, it was timely that they had an adapter and we were able to, the car actually died so bad on the truck, we were able to adapt it and run a generator to get enough juice to get the thing off the truck. Parkway, like Supervisor Collins mentioned, that 295 area or anywhere you got a couple DOT highway pull-offs. I know you don't want anybody sitting around on the Parkway at 2 a.m, but if you're considering a convenience or something like that, that Parkway section from where they pointed out that last one is quite a pull with probably the road conditions probably draw those cars a little bit more. And I know the speed that they're traveled at tends to draw them down a little bit too. So I just figured I'd throw my 2 cents in and let you guys know what I've been seeing.
So sorry, Supervisor Simmons, this is Mark from New Lebanon. You're actually picking up drivers whose EVs ran out of charge on the Parkway? Is that what you're
We've
saying?
had 2 of them so far on the Parkway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we should just put a charger wherever those cars run out of. Yeah, that's where they need the charger.
Yes, absolutely.
There you have it.
I mean, probably somewhere, it's in our case, it's happened north of 23. But it'd be nice to have something for folks to do too for the few hours that they may need to charge these. And I mean,
yeah.
Well, the benefit of the fast chargers is that you can within 20 minutes or so you can get quite a bit of juice. And a friend who just got a Tesla told me, if you use their software, and I'm sure all the electric cars are like this, they actually will, if you can say you're stopping at a station and you click that into the system, the computer will start conditioning the batteries to prepare them for charging so they're more efficient. But the fast chargers, of course, it's just pumping a lot more electricity and faster. So they don't need a full charge. It's not like level 2 where you're sitting there for hours and it's maybe just enough time. Maybe it's pulling off the road, but ideally it's getting a bite at the diner or going into a supermarket and feeling like you're efficient with your time, or being in the city of Hudson. We need to move on with this discussion, and I, personally think we should pursue this, and I would like to recommend that the county take advantage of this opportunity. So I personally would like to make a motion that we recommend that the county pursue the DEC grant, or consider pursuing the DEC grant when it is issued, and developing a proposal for a site in the county for a public fast charging station. There's a lot of openness in that because we have a lot more work to do, but I don't want to wait until August to bring this, forward because we'll miss the boat, I'm afraid. So I'd like to make that motion and open it up for a second or any discussion.
I'll second it.
And discussion. Any
Yeah, David, I do have to say that I'm certainly open to these thoughts and happy to explore it a little bit more with some of the Board of Supervisors. I don't know that we're ready just yet to commit to the level 3 fast charging because of location, and I was ready to say maybe we try and look at that at the county airport where we do own the land and we could work with that company. We could use the municipal funding maybe to help pay for it. That might be a possibility I could support at this time, but that would take some coordination. I don't know if that was agreeable there. And then listening to Craig and others about the need for it at a different location in the county, I don't know, but trying to commit to go after grant funding to put something on private property right now without knowing enough information, I hesitate on that. But we certainly do need to get some charging, and as far as the county moving ahead with its own, we need to do that pretty soon. So, and I'd certainly like to explore possibilities for where we can put a level 3 charger in the county and help people, but it needs to benefit people, not cost the residents too much money. So.
I agree with you personally, with really everything you've said about not, being careful and smart about this, and not committing to something that's going to cost taxpayers a lot of money for private benefit for an individual business. I think that that's a very fair point. It's my personal opinion, so I agree with you. I think there's a lot of room for exploration here to determine which locations, whether private or public, meaning whether they're on private land and there's a need for an easement and an arrangement like they have at the brewery, which seems to have worked as a matter of kind of the private public access. And I think that there's also a lot of opportunity to explore, whether this is something that the county wants to pursue. But if the task force can speak as an advisor to the county government and recommend that this consideration should be fast tracked, meaning that the discussion should be fast tracked so that there's a decision that can be made and that the county board has the opportunity to discuss whether to pursue this grant before it's moot. I think that's important. I think if we just table it and let the discussions happen, we're going to miss the boat and we won't have the opportunity. I'm not saying that at the end of the day, the county's going to decide, I don't know whether the county's going to decide to pursue this grant, but I do think we should bring it to their attention, as in our advisory role.
Okay. Hello, this is Bill Rohr with TGW. Can you folks hear me?
Yes. Thanks, Bill.
Okay. Just a couple things here. We're certainly prepared to write this grant, somewhat familiar with the material at hand, and would of course needs, the advice of someone with some more technical skill sets. But the other thing I can do is to take a look at this and kind of map out a critical path here to understand just when we need certain decisions made.
Yeah, that would be very helpful, Bill.
Okay.
That would be helpful. So yeah, I think there are many steps along the way here. This is getting the ball moving so that the proper channels within government can have an opportunity to explore this and determine whether, when the grant does become available, whether to pursue it or not. Okay, well, let's take a vote on the motion that's on the floor and been seconded to recommend to the County Board of Supervisors to pursue these grant opportunities for a fast charging station in the county, including a selection of a site to build out around that. All in favor? Any opposed? Please say if you're opposed so we can capture it, not just your hand. Any abstentions? I didn't ask that last time. Okay, great. So I'll provide the language there and I'll email it out to everyone so everyone sees it. Some more updates real quick. We've got the Climate Carnival update and the Community Solar update. The Community Solar update's very quick. Kara had to jump off. She gave us the update that so far from Neighborhood Sun, 1.5 megawatts enrolled, 130 enrollees. So that's great news. Unfortunately, we were too late. I believe Tara can clarify this, too late to qualify for the few large municipal grants through NYSERDA. So we submitted a while ago, we submitted our initial enrollments, and we haven't heard that we've gotten a grant, whereas the town of Ghent and some have heard. So I'm assuming, and Tara, if you're still on, if you could clarify this, or I don't know if you have an answer. Steve, do you want to comment on this?
Well, I'll let Tara, if she's still there, comment on that aspect. The other thing I wanted to bring up is I believe that we had a max, the agreement was for a max of 100 for the residential incentive. So I guess we need to clarify with Kara whether they're going to honor that beyond the 100. And in addition, I went back and looked at the agreement. It said it's actually only valid until the end of June of 2022. So I think we need to clarify with both Nexamp and them. Have we heard anything from Nexamp in terms of signups?
I haven't. I just emailed Jared and have not heard. They have not been, we haven't been in touch. I don't know if Wendy's been in touch with Jared, but I haven't heard anything.
Well, yeah, so at minimum, we need to clarify with Kara whether they're going to honor the $100 incentive to residents. Because if we're promoting that in our communities and they're not going to honor that, then we have to tell people that.
Right, that's right. And there's another issue, which is that NYSEG capacity is now limited through Neighborhood Sun projects. So people are being put on a wait list if they go to the enrollment page, they indicate they're NYSEG customers, and then they're informed that they can sign up and be put on a wait list as opposed to an enrollment, which is not a problem. It's a good problem to have in a way. It's unfortunate there's not more immediate capacity, but we expect that in the next year or so there will be more capacity, and those people will be given the first opportunity to sign up.
Mm.
Steve, I'll check on the agreements and the dates and the resident or enrollee stipend or bonus and
Yeah.
make sure that we clarify that with the language that's online.
Steve, I just want to let you know that our MOU between Nexamp and Neighborhood Sons runs through December 31st, 2022.
Okay, great. Yeah, the original one I guess I looked at had said June.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Wendy.
Yep.
So that's what's happening there. Let's move forward with if there's any other questions on the community solar project, please interrupt me, raise your hand, put something in the chat. Otherwise, Tara, I don't know if you're still on. Just one.
I am. Yep. Sorry,
Okay.
I had to take a call. I don't know if you asked me a question there. But
Oh yeah, no worries. That's great. I assume that we didn't qualify for a large municipal NYSERDA grant.
You are correct. Unfortunately, it looks like you just missed it. So I wish that they would send an official notification to you guys, but I've asked NYSERDA and they unfortunately aren't doing that right now. So you won't get any official, you didn't get the grant, but based on, the back end that I can see, the last one was awarded right before you guys submitted.
Okay. We still will get the per
Points.
customer amount from Neighborhood Sun and Nexamp. So there is some revenue that will come into the county to support the work, the sustainability work, but not the 15,000 that we're hoping to get on top of that, which is too bad. Okay, thanks, Tara. The Climate Carnival is shaping up July 16th. There are food trucks, bands. There might be a marching band moving through. There are about 30 vendors right now, and we're working to get more. We have a small budget for publicity and marketing. There'll be some yard signs, so we're really hoping to turn people out. and it should be a lot of fun. So the one particular request, and oh, by the way, we have a URL which directs people, it's climatecarnival.org, which directs people to the kind of somewhat hidden away web page on the county website. Makes it a little easier to get there, and that can be used to sign up as a vendor or just get general information on the event. And so if you know of anyone, a business or a governmental agency or a nonprofit who would be interested, who you think would be would benefit, we would benefit from being at the event and having a table. It's free. There's no fee. And we're encouraging more people to sign up. We have the fairgrounds, so we have a lot of space. And Jolene and Tistria have been leading the efforts here with our committee, and it's really very exciting what's coming together here. We do have one request, which is a very specific request, which is we need volunteers, but that's not the request to ask you to volunteer, although that would be great. We actually need someone to step up and serve as a volunteer coordinator to help us with the use of the volunteers that we have for the event. We don't, so if anyone is interested in playing that role or knows someone that might, let me know or let Tistria or Jolene know, because there are multiple areas where we'll need key people to help with discrete tasks, including helping with an assistant to the sound engineer for the stage, no technical skills required. Bruce, I know, will speak in a minute about this and perhaps other things, but we have quite a number of needs around the repair cafe and the free store. So this is what Tistria is organizing. There's a need for volunteers the day before to organize all of the goods, and during and after as well. So we'll be putting out a continual call for volunteers, and we need someone to be the kind of point person to quarterback the volunteers. So if anyone wants to volunteer from this group or knows anyone, let me know. Bruce.
Two things. Well, you said most of the things I was going to say about needing people to move things. We're also looking for more free store donations from towns other than New Lebanon, even though last night I heard we have so much stuff, we don't know what we're going to do with it all. But it's good to get diversify. We're looking for fixers all the time. If anyone knows anyone that knows how to fix anything. And I have a young woman who's a friend who wants to help. I broached the idea of the coordinator position. I haven't heard back from her, so she's a possibility. I'm not very confident that she's going to say yes, but that's just one person that I've had. So that's it.
Okay. So let me know, or let us know if anyone comes to mind. That Wendy.
Bruce, Matthew sent an email this morning saying that he wasn't able to be here today, but he's working in Germantown and that they're collecting, what's it say? They're collecting clothes that are being held at the Germantown Library, and they'll be transporting them on July 14th. And he's also available to help sort. So he asked to be CC'd on any information in regards to that moving forward.
Great. All right. So that's really the update on the Climate Carnival. We'll keep everyone updated, and we'll have another meeting just before the vote. So last minute info we'll get out to you. There are a couple other things that I wanted just to make sure we're on people's radar. One is the DEC historically has had a grant program, apart from the one we were just talking about, the ZEV one, a general climate smart communities grant program. They skipped last year or the year before, but every year they've focused on particular areas, and that RFP is now out, and it's due July 29th. It requires a 50% match. So this is ideally suited to projects that are kind of already in the works, or there is already a budget, and this can reduce the cost significantly for not just the county, but towns as well. I wanted to bring this to everyone's attention because this has to percolate down to the level of operations in the municipal government to identify whether there are opportunities that would fit. There are implementation grants and certification grants. The implementation grants start at $50,000 at a minimum. That would be for a $100,000 project, and certification grants that start at $10,000 grants, $20,000 project. I will send this out to everyone, the RFP, so they can see it, but just wanted to give you a quick overview. The implementation grants are focused this year on mass transit, which probably isn't all that relevant to most of our areas, but there might be something in there that strikes you. Organic waste, so that is something that clearly is in process with Jolene and Wendy and the department with the work they're already doing, and maybe there's an opportunity for something that's related to the compost program, or they specifically call out biogas digesters. I know that's something that Jolene's looking at, but I'm not sure it's far enough along to benefit. Refrigerant management, huge source of greenhouse gases, and old leaky refrigerants are something that we really need to deal with, much more potent than carbon dioxide. And so a lot of benefits there. That would be improving HVAC systems or replacing that type of thing. So if there are projects in your town or at the county level where folks know, yeah, we have this thing, it's budgeted, or we're thinking about it, this might just fit. And then renewable energy in low income communities. So this could be solar, heat pumps. And so if there are any opportunities, any existing projects or funding that could be used, this could lead to a match to help people install heat pumps in their homes, which are incredibly efficient relative to the cost of energy right now for an older system. There's also some funding for natural resilience. So this would be like wetlands, restoration, tree planting, and flood risk reduction. So culverts, you could get a project if you're upsizing a culvert to deal with floods. This could cover significant half the cost of that project. So July 29th is the deadline, and this should be on your radar if that fits. The second category is certification, which it would allow us to use the funds for one of many certification actions, and the ones that pop up to me, and please look and let's have a discussion continued by email on this, but with the greenhouse gas inventory is something that we've talked about doing. There's a cost in terms of software. There's a cost with eClay, which is one of the local kind of consulting groups that help set this up. And this is the step toward a climate action plan and really understanding what our overall footprint is, either for government operations or more broadly for community greenhouse gas inventories. And this could provide funding. That's the only one where I think we as a committee might, there might be others, but the one that struck me as a potential opportunity for this committee, if we can identify, $10,000 or so, or perhaps a little more from the solar community solar funds that will be coming in. And I don't know how that works from a budget standpoint and what it would take to do that, but there is an opportunity for us to potentially use those funds to match a certification grant, and that could double the value of that money. So I just wanted to bring that to people's attention and see if there's any comments or thoughts. I know this has been a long meeting. Thank you for hanging in there, everyone. A lot of information. Got a lot to do. All right. Well, Wendy and I will continue to talk about that and see if there's an opportunity for us to pursue that for the county. If there's anything discrete that would work, but be aware, and I'll send this around for your towns. I think there's potential for a lot of different types of projects. It might just fit. So put that on your radar. And then the last thing was just the energy benchmarking. I think Wendy has been working a lot on this, and I think she's close to having this wrapped up. I don't know if there's anything to add to that, but just want to give an opportunity to talk about the good
So
work.
I shared it with Tara today. She's gonna look over it and let me know how it looks.
Great. And Wendy, there's I mean, there's great news on the overall certification front.